Everybody is going completely bonkers over newly released footage of the January 6th riots. But who cares about checking what the footage actually shows when you have social media influencers to show you the bits that conveniently match their narratives? Welcome to America Uncovered, I'm Chris Chappell. We're getting close to 3 years since the January 6th riot, and yet, sometimes it feels like it just happened yesterday. Now is one of those times. The rage wars over January 6th have reignited in full force since Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said last week that he'd make 40,000 hours of January 6th footage available to the general public. The moment he said that, you can bet both Democrats and Republicans went absolutely bonkers. So far, around 90 hours of footage has been released on the Committee on House Administration's website. More will come to the public over the next several months. I don't know who's going to watch all 44,000 hours of this, though. I'd rather just rewatch the Hobbit movies. The decision to release the footage is controversial in of itself. Some see it positively as a way to promote transparency. Johnson said this decision will provide millions of Americans, criminal defendants, public interest organizations, and the media an ability to see for themselves what happened that day, rather than having to rely upon the interpretation of a small group of government officials. Many Republicans commended Johnson, including former U.S. President Donald Trump, who congratulated Johnson for having the courage and fortitude to release the January 6th tapes publicly. I'm not sure congratulations were the right sentiment there, but we get the idea. Democrats, meanwhile, blasted the release of the January 6th footage, saying that it's fueling far-right conspiracies, like the idea that undercover federal agents instigated violence during the riots. If raw footage is fueling conspiracy theories, I think you might have a bigger problem there, Democrats. Meanwhile, Democratic Representative Joe Morales said Johnson's decision was unconscionable and that it endangered his colleagues, staff, visitors, and the U.S. by allowing virtually unfettered access to sensitive Capitol security footage. However, Johnson said that the committee is processing the footage to blur the faces of individuals, and that around 5% of the available footage is being withheld because it may involve sensitive security information related to the building architecture. Democrats' reluctance to release footage has many wondering if they're genuinely concerned about security or if they're simply afraid of the footage undermining the narrative that they're pushing. And Democrats are very open about pushing a narrative. In late 2021, then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi held a commemoration of the January 6th riot and explicitly said that the goal was to establish and preserve the narrative of January 6th. But of course, Democrats aren't the only ones pushing a narrative. People on both sides are trying to use the footage to create neat-fitting narratives. It's time for people to look at the footage as it stands and make honest, accurate assessments. Luckily, that's what we're here for. I mean, it's either that or watch The Hobbit. Let's first start by pointing out what's wrong with the picture painted by those who insist January 6th was an insurrection.
Let's just be honest about what happened that day. That was an attack on our Capitol. Insurrectionists need to be held accountable for what they did.
Some have even gone so far as to compare it to Pearl Harbor and 9/11, or worse than 9/11.
But when you look at something that is an attack on democracy, something that could actually bring about a fundamental change to American governance as we understand it, 9/11 is nothing compared to January 6th.
Which is ridiculous. You can tell January 6th was nothing like 9/11 because you can't buy a January 6th commemorative coin from the January 6th Memorial's gift shop. Nothing says the 9/11 terrorists failed more than using their attacks to fuel capitalism. Many are focusing on the most violent aspects of the riot to support the idea that what happened was an all-out attack on democracy itself. Liz Cheney, for example, a Republican member of the January 6th committee that sought to punish rioters and Trump, shared this clip. Some say this footage proves that January 6th was in fact an insurrection. But as I've noted in the past, there are several reasons the word insurrection really doesn't describe what happened on January 6th. For one, the FBI found scant evidence that the U.S. Capitol attack was coordinated. But who cares about nuance when you can just tag the people you hate with nasty labels? If you want to learn more about that, check out this episode. Now, the latest footage certainly makes the lack of coordination clear. It seems like people are more or less aimlessly walking around with security largely standing around. This really isn't the type of picture you'd think of when you think of a coordinated attack to obtain power. This looks more like a mob just going into a place and wondering, now what, as they walk around the Capitol. I've seen more unruly Black Fridays than this, at Hallmark stores. Officers calmly facilitating their passage don't seem to be acting as though they're dealing with an insurrection. More like clueless teenagers on a school trip. But that's not the whole story either. Many on the right would have you conclude that the footage exonerates every person charged, and that we've all been to concerts that were more intense and dangerous than January 6th. But it's not as simple as that. Many on the right are doing quite a lot of cherry picking themselves, and their own narratives don't quite hold up. I'll show you more after the break. Welcome back. So let's look at the right's narrative about January 6th. Many claim it just wasn't all that violent. They point to footage of J6ers casually strolling through corridors, as well as footage of security calmly letting crowds of people through doors. But things aren't as squeaky clean as those on the right make it seem. That footage I just showed you also featured Capitol Police roughly piling an uncooperative man through the same door moments before more people walked on their own in the same direction. Shortly after those people came another man being dragged out. Famous conservative commentator Benny Johnson shared this clip of a Capitol security officer appearing to give a handshake as he guides the crowd down the hallway. You'd assume, based from that clip alone, that security and the crowd were completely chill with each other. What that clip on X doesn't show you is how the crowd went past the guards against their wishes down the hallway to the left. That crowd was later redirected. It's clear that Capitol security was doing all it could to not escalate conflict by redirecting as many people as calmly as possible. But not everyone in those crowds were so pleasant. There were scuffles, such as here at the Senate carriage doorway. Here in the Senate wing, you can see the crowd attempt to break through the door and window so that others can pass through. Police were struggling to keep that crowd out, even going so far as to pull furniture up to barricade the entrances. Later, you can see someone bashing against a police officer holding a riot shield, and someone else hitting security with a Trump flag, before the crowd pushed completely through. Although, to give a full picture, the people eventually were just walking and standing around. Eventually, security casually brought them back out, talked with them, and saw them leave. There are more examples of the crowd getting rowdy. In the West Stairs, you can see security backing up as they fight off a crowd, which included someone who picked up a sign and sought to break into a door. Others soon joined and broke it open. At the North Door appointment desk, you had people being guided one way, but they later came back up and were pushed back. Seeing all the footage, you get the vibe that people weren't really coordinated and that everything's just happening spontaneously. Is this as bad as Pearl Harbor or 9/11? No. Is it an insurrection? No. But it's not a walk in the park either. It's a riot. Plain and simple, complete with chaos and confusion. Even the police often seem confused about what they're supposed to be doing. All of that makes sense. Another thing to keep in mind is that the Capitol building is really big. At any given time, different groups of people were doing different things in different places, and the police and security had to react to the people nearest to them. Now, some see more than just chaos and confusion. They see a plan to make Trump supporters look bad. Journalist and influencer Tim Pool, for example, argued that the police were tricking people by leading them around. But the more likely explanation, based on this footage, was that security was trying to use crowd control tactics to try and calmly redirect people with as little drama as possible. The last thing Capitol security wanted was an all-out brawl in the hallways. Others think January 6th was an operation organized by the government. They point to footage of security appearing to uncuff and fist bump a man in the Capitol building. Meanwhile, some say the Capitol Police may have incited a riot by firing munitions into a peaceful crowd. Tear gas, not live rounds. What we can get from all this is that there is no single narrative that the footage supports. People want things to fit neatly as though everything is planned out and executed perfectly. They see what they want to see, pulling out the pieces that support what they already think, rather than the other way around. This bleeds over to things completely unrelated, such as the pro-Palestinian protests. Many people are already making comparisons with the January 6th protests. Those who are sympathetic to the January 6th riots make the MAGA supporters look like saints, while those who support pro-Palestinian talking points are offended by people who compare Palestinian protests to MAGA ones. People will look at the same thing and come to wildly different conclusions because of their preconceived ideologies. What one side describes as chaos and a moral catastrophe, another side calls peaceful. It doesn't help that most people are forming their opinions based on select clips of footage circulating around social media. That's why we need people like you to go out there and look for yourself and draw your own conclusions without letting social media influencers or news outlets determine the narrative for you. Now, YouTube considers any conversation about J6 to be very sensitive. I don't know what will happen to this video after it's up. YouTube has deleted our videos before. That's why I've created a new show called Deep Thoughts While Gaming to talk about the things YouTube might flag, but hide them in gaming. This latest episode is about Baldur's Gate 3, but it's really about identity politics and gender identity. Check it out and let me know what you think. And while you're at it, smash that orange button to support America Uncovered on Patreon. Don't worry, you won't be charged by a committee for doing that. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.